Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's another lovely evening with the Virtual Tasting Society, the best tasting society on the internet. We're joined today by Joe and David. We've got Joe from Filey and David from Lochlea. Thank you guys both for joining us, being here. We're going to start with Joe from Filey. We've got the flagship, the STR, and the peated. Real quick from Lochlea, we have the barley, the fallow edition, and the plowing. The fallow does say Nelson Brothers. Ignore that. It's not true. It's from Lochlea. Y'all know the drill. Keep yourselves muted unless you're talking. Please ask questions, give your tasting notes, have fun. And I'm going to, at this point, turn it over to Joe so you can get started and let us know if there's a tasting order you would like us to do. And let's go.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, look, thanks for the introduction. And it's great to be on this tasting, meeting you all. So, yeah, thanks for having us along. Thank you, Sam. So normally in a tasting for US, you'd be chatting to our managing director, David, who looks after international sales for us. So, you know, I'm kind of jumping in and doing him a favor tonight. So, yeah, it's not my main role. My main role at the distillery is really what we put in a bottle. My job title is whiskey director, which is a fantastic job title, and you know it does mean that I spend a lot of my working day and week tasting whiskey and you know looking after the maturing stocks, as well as you know what we're filling in terms of casks and I guess when we release whiskies as well is a really important part of it. So a kind of year's worth of releases, kind of mapping it out and working with the rest of the team, to kind of get that whiskey out of the warehouse, get it into the warehouse, crucially, and get it back out again. If you want to hit me with any questions about how we make our whiskey, then please hit me. I'm on a mobile device, so I can't quite see the chat so well. But yeah, please do kind of pipe up and cut me off and ask a question if something leaps to mind. So the order in which we were going to try ours is the flagship first. So this is Filey Bay flagship, and is the starting point in the range for us. It's really light, fresh, fruity style. And it's the one whiskey that we have available all year. So we have a range that is ever evolving and growing, and flagship is the one whiskey that we like to make sure is always available. So it doesn't matter if you guys are buying a bottle in the US or you're coming over to Europe, you know, you're coming through the door of our distillery, we want to make sure that you can always get hold of a bottle of flagship. So it's that one whiskey we always have available and is the best example of the distillery character and what we make. So looking at kind of light, fruity, easygoing flavor profile. So if you haven't already got that in your glass, please do pour it and start having a nose. And indeed a little sip when you're ready. I'm guessing I don't need to tell you guys how to drink whiskey, right? Yeah, so there's I don't think any need for that kind of introduction. You seem pretty well versed, which is good. It's as I say, the starting point. So while you're sipping that and just tasting it and getting to know our character, I'll give you a bit of background on the distillery and us as a business. So we are the first single malt whiskey from Yorkshire, which is a large county in the north of England, and in the area of the country where we are, we have always grown a lot of barley. So it's one of the principal barley growing areas of the United Kingdom, and historically, most of that barley that would be grown all around Yorkshire and indeed on our farm would then be malted in maltings.
Over for Saturday? No, that's fine.
And
from the housewarming party
after it's been hey, sorry, I think that's sorted. All that barley that was being malted would be sent to kind of centralized maltings, and then moved up to distilleries in Scotland, and indeed a lot of breweries around Yorkshire. So yeah, it's an area that's very well known for barley, an area that's very well known for beer, but not an area that was known well for whiskey. So in 2016, when we fired up and started making spirit and laying down casks, it was quite a big deal for the county that we're in, and because we're quite a large county, about 5.5 million people in Yorkshire, it was quite a big leap. So our background is actually in farming, and this is where we have quite a lot of crossover with Lochlea. And yeah, our co-founders, because we are in fact independently owned, but our co-founders, Tom Mellor, David Thompson. Tom is a third generation barley farmer. So yeah, we've been in a very privileged position as a whiskey distillery, actually, because of Tom's background, and what he's always done and his family have always done, has allowed us to, build on from, a working farm. I suppose one way of looking at us is like a big diversification project. So Tom's family have been growing barley since the mid 1940s. Early noughties, 2003, set up a brewery to diversify, and looking around on the farm, what have we got? Well, we've got barley, a lot of it, typically grow 600 tons a year, and we've got a water supply on the farm as well. So making beer made a lot of sense. And of course, the next logical step on from that is making whiskey. Okay, so if you're already making beer, the early parts of that process are not identical. There are differences, but the principles are absolutely the same. So going from farming, brewing, and distilling is our history, our journey, and it comes very much from a place of farming first and growing barley at the very heart of it all.
Question for you. So
yes.
on this one, so it doesn't have an age statement?
That's correct. Yes.
Can you elaborate on? I
mean, sorry, yeah, of course I can. Yeah. So we don't obviously, as a younger distillery, age statements for us aren't something we've used yet. Mm-hmm. Most of what we've bottled now, indeed, flagship is in that 5.5 year range. Some of the finishes now are creeping into 5.5, 6 year old. Special releases and single casks when we do them, they will obviously give you a little snapshot into older stocks. Our oldest casks just tipped past 8 years old a couple of weeks ago. So we don't have kind of hundreds of thousands of casks, and we certainly don't have a great number of casks that are particularly old. So what that means for us is, if we're planning, and always have planned really, to get whiskey in a bottle, when it was tasting good, first and foremost, but if you want to get whiskey in a bottle at this age, and this will be the same with Lochlea as well, I'm certain, and other distilleries of a similar age to us, is you're not relying so much in many years in cask to get to a whiskey that's really flavorful and really delicious and enjoyable to drink. What you find in a lot younger distilleries now, depending on their setup and why they're doing what they're doing, of course, and in particular us, we're refining that production process. So you have to look at every part of the whiskey making process and refine it and do it absolutely the best you can. So this, obviously for us starts with growing barley, but right from the milling, mash tun, fermentation, how you distill, where you're cutting, how you make that spirit, and your choice around casks. And any one of these things on its own arguably wouldn't be enough, but if you, as I say, refine the whole process, actually you can get to something that's tasting really good in a remarkably short space of time.
This is absolutely fantastic, and I'm a peat head, so so this is normally not necessarily my jam, so to speak, this is really good, and I can only imagine, you know, a couple of years, it's going to be even better. But so that's why I was curious.
Well, we're progressing all the time, and one of the really lovely things about if this is the first time any of you have tasted our whiskey, you keep an eye on us and see how we continue to develop over the years in front of us. That's one of the really lovely things of finding a distillery, in terms of where it's at in its working history, because you can come with us and see how we develop in time. And yeah, we're seeing some really interesting development in the casks, and now with Flagship, as I mentioned, because it's that one whiskey we always have available. It's a process where, unlike all the other whiskies we release, which are in batches, which I'll explain a little bit more in a minute, for Flagship, using like a fractional blending system or marrying system, which is a bit like a Solera. So, the very first cask that went into Flagship back in August 2020, that whiskey was in that 4-year zone. Whereas, now the whiskey that we're using in the Flagship system is always creeping up. So the average age of this whiskey is always increasing. So it hasn't yet arguably hit that, sort of peak's probably the wrong term, but hit a point where we would stop increasing the age. So it's still evolving, still going. And one day, if we want to get really, really nerdy, of which I'm sure we'll have some customers somewhere that will want to do it, we can look at the evolution of Flagship. We can try a
we like nerdy. We're
okay,
always good with nerdy.
We could do a Flagship vertical in a year or two's time, and we can try it over the course of 5-6 years, and you can see how it's gradually developed, which would be lovely. But I hope you're enjoying it so far. There's a nice kind of starting whiskey. We often refer to it as a whiskey that's really great at the start of the night, and kind of for you guys, 7 o'clock on a Thursday evening, perfect, hopefully.
This is really nice. It's definitely very easy to drink.
Yeah, nice and light, very easy going, and that's what we set out to create. Yeah, I started working with Tom and David back in November 2016. So they'd got the first kind of 100 or so casks filled by this point. And when we were set up as well in terms of expertise, we worked very, very, very closely with a really brilliant consultant, Dr. Jim Swan, and a lot of the whiskey that we're putting through into bottle now, is distilled 2016, 17, 18. We haven't really bottled anything from 19. So it's all these kind of early years of production, which are obviously very special years of production for any distillery, because they're the ones that you rely on very heavily, of course, as you come in of age and everything. And but it's quite satisfying when we're taking casks out, and that you knocked that bung into that cask back in 2017, and you're getting that whiskey out, getting it in a bottle, and great satisfaction when you get to see people tasting it on the other side of the Atlantic, which is brilliant. Any questions?
How did you end up at 46%?
That's a great question.
A natural spot, or was there a reason?
Well, it's a strength that we all like, first and foremost. It's great strength for body, mouthfeel. It's got at 46, that the whiskey's character just has, I think, more ability to shine. You've got more grip on the palate. So it's a strength that we all like, because at 40, I'm sure you guys have tried a lot of whiskies at 40, a lot of absolutely brilliant whiskey bottled at 40%. But I'm certain you guys, as I have many times over the years, if you tried something at 40 and gone, I wonder what that would have been like if it was just a bit stronger, would it have been just a little bit more satisfying to drink? And so it's a strength that we all like, but on a more kind of technical level, because we don't chill filter, It allows also to keep that whiskey looking really clear and bright in the bottle. So, you know, if we were bottling in lower ranges of ABV, and in fact, if any of you are adding water to your whiskies this evening, and you start kind of bringing these whiskies down into the mid 30s range, then you'd notice them start to haze a little bit. And you know, the 46% is basically allowing for a lot of those solids and fatty acids and lipids to stay in solution, so they don't start to appear in the whiskey. So it's useful in the sense, if you don't chill filter, bottling a little bit higher helps ensure the clarity and the kind of brightness of the whiskey in the bottle as well. But the main reason for us is all about that mouthfeel, texture, strength, and body. Yeah.
That makes sense.
And this is a good one for right now. It's been really hot over here, and this is the kind of whiskey I reach for when it's, you know, been in the 90s, because it's light, it's crisp, it's not gonna knock you out for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, and summer whiskey. There we go.
It's a nice little summer cocktail without all the other nonsense stuff that they put in a cocktail. You know, take this,
Yeah,
put an umbrella in there. There's your cocktail.
Perfect. Yeah, I like it. I like your style. You know, keep it simple. You know, we'd all get served in cocktail bars much quicker if that was how they were doing it. I wonder if they charge us less though. Great. Well, should we move on? Are you guys ready to try the next whiskey? That's good. That's a few thumbs up. Lovely. So yeah, we're rolling on into our range. So flagship, core release, available all year. After that, we're into our range of finishes. So our finishes in this case is STR finish. See if I can get that lens to focus. This is bottled specifically for you guys over in the States at a higher strength of 48. So we're going even higher on these next two releases. And the finishes are in batches, by which we mean there are a number of casks that have been disgorged, married together, creating in the region of 5,500, 6,000 bottle batches. And once that batch is gone, it's gone. And we tend to overlap the batches a little bit, as you'd expect, so we're not running out of these finishes, but it doesn't always work out that way. It just depends really how fast they're selling and the rate at which they leave the distillery, which can be incredibly rapid these days. We used to look at really a batch of kind of 6,000 bottles and go, that's quite a lot of whiskey, and I think it's probably quite a lot of whiskey by most people's standards. But yeah, we can find now that a batch of any one of our finishes, maybe 50% of that batch can be going to export. And then by the time you've got all of that whiskey in different markets, and then you've spread the other half of the batch around UK specialists, trade, and then we sell direct from the distillery as well. So we get a lot of visitors and a lot of people coming to see us and a lot of fans and followers. This is one of the things about Yorkshire. We've got a very loyal following. So yeah, suddenly 6,000 bottles can go surprisingly quickly. So yeah, it's a really lovely whiskey. We are very fond of it at the distillery, and it didn't surprise me that it was one that that Sam and the Impex team altogether were really keen on as well. So it's our STR finish, and this is standing for shaved, toasted, and recharred casks. So STR, shaved, toasted, recharred. And this whiskey is matured primarily in, first of all, bourbon, much like flagship, and then moved into these really, really fascinating and interesting casks. They are quite clever in the sense that they have really been optimized for whiskey maturation. So these previously held red wine from Rioja, Spain. Red wine was in those casks for 5 years, and over that 5 years, that wine has really soaked into that oak. The wood soak on it is quite powerful. So if we took a spirit style like ours, which of course, light, delicate, you've all tried flagship now. So if we took a whiskey like ours and put it into these casks where the wine has just come out, there's a very good chance that wine is going to start to overwhelm our spirit character and distillery character. Not impossible to get right, but a good chance with all of that wood soak from the wine and all of that tannin from the wine that we're going to get a whiskey that's quite hard to balance because of our kind of light character. So this process of shaving, toasting, recharring is really about getting that wine that was previously in the cask to calm down, but you still retain a lot of the really lovely fruity characters from the wine as well. So it's about finding that sweet spot, I suppose, is one way of looking at it. And you still get really nice fruit. You still get really lovely characteristics from the wine, but nicely balanced out with our distillery style and character. So you've still got something that's light, but you're getting richer and you're getting more complexity. And you should hopefully be finding, as you're tasting this, some red fruits, and we kind of refer to it really as like ripe berries, summer berries. One recent description which I've really liked, which was actually at quite a warm whiskey show up in Edinburgh, and it was a description along the lines of like raspberry ripple ice cream, if you guys are familiar with that, which I really quite like. So yeah, have a little taste of it if you haven't already. You'll notice the color is different to the flagship. Of course, this is natural color, but we're not adulterating this whiskey in any way with anything other than the color that you're seeing from the maturation and from the cask.
I definitely get that like red wine tannin spice on the finish.
I think at 48 as well, which is where you guys have this, is again, we've talked about 46 giving you mouthfeel and more longevity in the finish. Yeah, you should see a bit more of that at 48, certainly. The casks in question were pioneered by the legend that was Jim Swan. So you tend to find if you got distilleries that worked with Dr. Swan, they usually have some STRs in that warehouse somewhere. Some more than others. We've got a reasonable amount, and obviously this whiskey is one that we really like and release every year, if not more often now, as the batches are moving through a bit quicker. So yeah, it's a cask type that we're really fond of. We get really, really great results with it, and hopefully you're enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm done with my sample. Yeah, no, that was really good. I felt a couple of drops of water on that one just exploded the flavors.
Very good.
And that's a high praise coming from mine, because usually he's likes the peated ones best.
Yeah, no,
okay.
As I said, I'm a
for him to say
I'm
that
a
he
Peter.
usually likes the non-peated ones, that's saying something.
Hey, I don't discriminate. It's just it's bourbon. I don't care for.
I've been trying to drink more
Scotch.
bourbon.
No, don't. It's a waste of your time. Why would you import that crap when you have all this good stuff yourself right around the corner?
I certainly can't argue with you on that point. We are absolutely spoiled with a lot of good whiskey within arm's reach, certainly in the UK. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, it's just trying to keep keep up to speed with what's happening. Make sure that you're not forgetting kind of crucial, pivotal whiskey styles that are made elsewhere in the world. And
right.
Yeah, bourbon, of course, as a cask type for us is really important. So I do tend to make an effort where I can, but I will be honest, yeah, I don't drink as much of it as other types of malt whiskey.
Right.
Henrik, as an immigrant to immigrant, is it's based to revoke your citizenship. So
Hey, I still have my Danish passport. It's more powerful than the American passport, anyways.
Joe, if you don't mind a technical question.
Of course.
I don't know if you see this here. I noticed there's an additional steel in between the two pot steels there. Can you elaborate on this, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great question, Sam. Thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, we have quite a unique setup in our still house. It's a setup that allows us to make two styles of spirit, basically, which is absolutely brilliant because from a whiskey making point of view, what that does is it kicks the door open to options. And as a malt whiskey distillery in England, we're certainly, as an industry, whiskey industry in England, we're not at a position where people would, look to swap casks or anything like that. So if you're making single malt whiskey, of course, there's lots of different things that you can do with a set of pot stills. There's loads that you can do with casks in terms of flavor. It's a lot of choices there. But what this extra process allows for us is options and flavor options and texture options. So we have what we call a 4-plate rectifying column, and it works in tandem with our spirit still. And this setup that we have, I believe we could be the only malt whiskey distillery in the UK with it in how it's set in our distillery. We're not the only malt whiskey distillery to use columns in our distillery, if you like, but in terms of how we have it set up, it is very unique. So yeah, on any of the cartons that you find of our releases, I shall find one which is a little bit brighter. There we go. Hopefully you guys can see that a little bit. So yeah, the nature of how it works is like, I suppose, like a giant purifier is one way of looking at it. Distilleries in Scotland, there's some very well-known ones like Glen Grant, Ardbeg, are two that spring to mind, where you have a purifier on the line arm, and that would throw condensed spirit from the line arm back into the pot, which would then obviously redistill, and it increases what we call in the industry a reflux. And generally speaking, the more reflux that you're creating, the more copper contact you're creating with that process, and therefore you're stripping out more impurities from the spirit, and it creates a lighter spirit style. So this 4-plate column that we've got and how it operates is really supercharging reflux. And when we're distilling our more kind of traditional style and not using the column, we're still a light spirit style, but our new make, our middle cut, will be typically 73%. When we're using the column, our middle cut will be typically 85, 86, so much higher. And so you've got a much purer distillate. Now, there's a limit to that. We never wanted that column to be through the roof of the distillery, literally, with 16 plates or something like that, and if you get into that kind of territory, you can drive the spirit strength up really high, and so if you wanted to make, most like grain whiskey, for example, is going to be running off the stills much higher, or grain spirit much higher than that kind of mid-80s range. And the useful thing about keeping it within that mid-80s is you still retain loads of character. You still got loads of flavor in that spirit, but you do have a very different spirit. It is much lighter. So, you know, if any of you ever make it over and you come to the distillery and you have the opportunity to do that, which of course you'd be very welcome, you'd be able to taste the two new makes, and yeah, you can see really what that column is doing, and yeah, the texture is very different. So we rack and mature the two spirit styles separately and leave them to mature. And then when it comes to selecting casks for, you know, what's going to form a batch or what's coming through to flagship, it's then a case of, you know, creating a marriage of the two styles. And so this is where the options become really amazing and really helpful, because you can, you know, create a whiskey that is a percentage split of the two. And flagship is really in the region 70% of our more traditional style to 30% of our lighter style, whereas the STR that you're tasting now is more in the 50-50. It's like 52% pot, 48% column. It is a bit more what we would say column heavy, but that's the kind of internal term that we would use. It doesn't really make a lot of sense outside of the distillery or outside of our kind of setup. But I suppose one way of looking at it, if you thought about it in a sense of another creative process or something like music, of which most people like music, and if you think about, you know, if you have a vocalist and a drummer and a guitarist, yeah, you can do some amazing stuff. You can create some amazing music. But what having an extra spirit style, having that extra style of spirit maturing in the warehouse is like being able to add like a string section and a keyboard. And it just gives you, like I say, just kind of more options, ultimately, with what you can do with the whiskey at the end of it. Is that a satisfactory answer, Sam?
You know, now we can see you truly in production, because when I asked that, you know, technical question, you were just went on and on and on. And I've seen you at the distillery in action. You do magic, all I can say. So sorry if it was a little bit, but thank you for answering it.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Sam. Yeah, that's much appreciated. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. You know, we can be quite boring in production. You know, we talk about a lot of boring things. I think, well, things that most people would find boring, yeah, like filters, and yeah, pumps and moving liquid. Yeah, it gets yeah, it's not
You're
the kind
talking
of
to
stuff
the
that-
right, sorry, you're talking to the right group. These guys are geeky and consider themselves guru, and they want to know everything. So I would not ask this question if I didn't know the group. So
Yeah,
right
good.
audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, excellent.
We like all the details and all the nuances and anything you want to tell us, we're here for it.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, you know, that the most unique parts of our setup, you know, first malt whiskey from Yorkshire, which is, you know, a big deal for us. But, you know, you could take our distillery and you could set it up in any whiskey making place around the world. You could put our distillery and our setup in Scotland or Ireland or any state in the US, and the way in which we're making whiskey would still stand out. It is something quite unique, and that added kind of field to bottle element to it, and the fact of where we are and when we've set up. Yeah, you know, it's as I said at the start, it's a very privileged position to be in as someone who makes whiskey, because you've got so many amazing points of difference to kind of bigger setups, I suppose, from bigger distilling companies. So yeah, it's certainly field to bottle is a massively unique part of what we do. You know, I mean, you're in great company tonight with Lochlea. You know, you've got two of us on to chat about this. You know, but we are a rare thing in the world of malt whiskey. Not many of us. And yeah, on top of that, to have a very unique, you know, setup on the spirit side, and having a manual setup as well, which is increasingly rare these days as well. So we're very hands-on on all the equipment, you know, physically, you know, in that spirit safe, nosing and tasting our way through our middle cuts, making sure that it's very, very tight, very, very refined, and absolute best spirit that we can create. And so, yeah, it's a lovely thing. It's a very unique thing. And yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Next whiskey, are we ready?
I know I am.
Good, excellent. We're treading into slightly different ground for us as a distillery here. So, you know, we don't make peated spirit, and that's not to say we never will. We have talked about it a lot, but at the moment we don't make any spirit using barley that's been dried with peat. So this is the only whiskey we do that has any influence of peat whatsoever. And this is our Filey Bay peated finish. Again, this is our US version, which is at 48%. And, you know, one thing that really amazes me is that despite us not making peated spirit, never being known for making peated spirit, this is absolutely far and away one of our best sellers. And, you know, that I think for a lot of people, it hits this kind of sweet spot where you're getting a backdrop of smoke and a little bit of peat, but it's certainly not kind of big and heavy. The aim for this, the aim was like sweet and smoky. That was the plan, you know, just in really simple terms, you know, sweet and smoky, not looking for heavy phenolic kind of big medicinal characteristics, you know, certainly wasn't looking for anything big and heavy and oily like Lagavulin or those kind of big hefty Islay whiskies, you know, not trying to recreate those or even get anywhere near them. It was just trying to bring an element of it and just a little bit of smoke into the frame. Obviously we've got fans of peated whiskey on the tasting this evening, so this should be a really interesting one for you, because I think when people are really into peated whiskey, and if you're drinking loads of peated whiskey all the time, you can taste this and go, well, that's not that peaty. But if there's people on this tasting that never drink it, don't like it at all, I would have thought they'll have their nose in there and have a little bit on their palate and go, oh, hang on, it's there. And I can maybe just about deal with that because it's on the very light end of the peaty spectrum.
And
certainly.
that's kind of what I was going to say. It is kind of like Amanda said, kind of a summer whiskey. I would call this a summer peated Scotch, right? It's or whiskey. It's peated, but it's not there with knocking you down, peat. But this is really nice.
Yeah, it's got that element to it, and you know, building on from Flagship, you're getting another dimension of flavor. You're getting a bit more in terms of complexity. You know, you guys love to spend time with a whiskey, and this is more entertaining. It's got more to give you. You'll notice as you taste it and keep tasting it that the smoke will start to build. So, you know, if you spend, you know, enough time with this whiskey, you know, if any of you grab a bottle and, you know, you pour a decent measure of this and, you know, you sat and spend, you know, kind of 10, 15, 20 minutes with it, the more that it starts to coat your palate. And as you just relax and start breathing in and out, that smoke starts to lift off the back of your palate. It's like a kind of retronasal effect where the smoke and the peat builds over time as you're tasting it. You might get a bit of that just as you keep going with it over the next kind of few minutes.
Well, I'm one of those people that you described earlier that doesn't like peat, and took a sip of this and went, oh, wait a minute. I kind of like this. And I can see progressively moving forward with it and having it, the subtleness increase, but not, you know, the way regular peat does and smacks you in the face. And so it's really delightful. I love it.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. You've got hopefully a peated whiskey that, you know, if you've got friends over that love it, and you know, because it tends to split the room, doesn't it? And a lot of examples of peated whiskey are on the more extreme. You know, there's not a lot in the lighter mid range. You know, I never got this sent for a ppm testing, which is you know parts per million phenol kind of count. Most distilleries measure that in the barley. You know, so if you're seeing something like, you know, this whiskey is 55 ppm, they're usually talking about the parts per million phenols in the malted barley, not in the spirit. So you can lose a lot of those in mashing. You'll lose some of those phenols throughout the process. So in the spirit, you know, this will be coming in very low. And like I say, I never got it tested. Probably should do that. Would that be useful, Sam? Because
I think it's one of those. It is some people like that number and to be super high, but why? But then when you after you distill it, is it really a true measurement?
well, that's
So-
exactly right. And it isn't. And there was a couple of distilleries that made an effort to talk about it, and you know, we're measuring it in the spirit, which I think was a really good effort. But I think if anything, though, you know, a couple of years, 3 years more down the track for those distilleries that did that, I think they've maybe backed away from it a little bit. So I think it's you know, it might have arguably might have confused some people because they're going, look, you know,
Right.
this is measuring in the spirit, not measuring in the barley. And you know, every time that they're talking about that whiskey, they'd be talking about that naturally, because people would be comparing it and going, well, you know, this is saying it's 30 ppm or, you know, 25 ppm, but it's really smoky. You know, why is that? And they're going, yeah, you know, it's in the spirit. But you know, I would put this again right down at the lower end of the peated scale. And yeah, matured in peated casks, so not peated malt. This is introducing this character through maturing in casks that previously held heavily peated whiskey. And the casks in
Interesting.
question were from Islay, and the casks were from a distillery that's not dissimilar to us in some ways. It's independently owned. They also grow barley, and you know, they're not known for a big kind of heavy phenolic, big oily style or anything like that. So it felt like a really good fit for us. And you know, the nice thing about using peated casks, I'll be interested to see what kind of David's thoughts on it is, as well, and Lochlea and John's thoughts on it there, because you know, I find that it's really quite good for being able to control, you know, that smoke that you want in. And you know, this isn't in these casks for long. We're talking some of this whiskey was in peated casks for 6 months, some of it was in peated casks for 8. So you know, we're not talking long, and you know, you can really control that level of smoke, I find, by using them. You know, there's a bit of a double-edged sword. You know, you do get variety. You know, of the peated cask we filled, some will give you more peat than the one next to it. So you know, it's not always kind of black and white, as nothing tends to be when you're filling casks and maturing whiskey. But yeah, the fact that you can make a choice to get that spirit out of that cask when you feel like it's hit the right amount of smoke for what we're looking for, having that degree of control is really good. And yeah, hopefully, you know, you guys are enjoying this, and you'd agree.
I'm always amazed at how much flavor a peated whiskey barrel can give to an unpeated whiskey. And I mean, well done you. This is amazing stuff. It's so good.
Yeah, well, thanks very much. Yeah, it's always one of our favorites. Like, you know, we don't make peated whiskey, but yeah, it seems to be one that a lot of people repeat by.
Show off,
yeah.
Golan.
For the peat.
Yeah.
Joe, can you talk a little bit about, because I know you're fond to bottle, so can you talk about a little bit the farm process? I don't know how much you involved, or it's more David thing. But tell us a little bit about that. Are you guys gonna trying to reproduce some of the old style, 70s to the 90s kind of the distillation that was in Scotland, that was barley, was done differently, not just the percentage of alcohol, maximize at everything to the profit. What is the game with that? What is the future with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a big question. I mean, I'll to kind of answer the first bit. So, as a working farm, pre making beer and whiskey, the farm operated as many farms would do that grow barley for malting, which is being led by what their customers want. And of course, maltings are looking to supply their customers with something that's gonna tick all those boxes. And yeah, yield is definitely one of those boxes that bigger distilling companies need to tick. So we have always really focused more on modern varieties as a farm, and we continue to do that. And there's a lot of reasons why. We're big on regenerative agriculture and looking after the land and safeguarding that for future generations. Modern varieties and more modern ways of looking at it can actually be more beneficial from that perspective. So if you're looking to, safeguard the farm for future generations, actually modern varieties can be a good choice. Yield wise, for us, it's not about yield. We like a good yield, but it's not the driving force of what is behind us. As a smaller independent distillery, it's not. No one's getting hauled over the coals if you don't hit the right LPA per tonnage of malt. So we don't have that kind of pressure. But I think looking forward is really important with it. There's a lot of discussion and a lot of, I suppose, distilleries talking about looking backwards. And I get it. I get it. Anyone who's tasted 60s Bamor, 70s Ardbeg, 70s Lefroy, who doesn't want that? The idea of trying to reverse engineer it and starting with barley as a point to try and recreate those whiskies. I think that it's chasing, maybe not chasing the impossible, but you're not in reality. You're trying to recreate something from decades ago, and it would be brilliant if someone cracks it. I'll be absolutely in the queue to buy a bottle when they get it right, for sure. But I don't know really when the distilleries that are doing this, when we're seeing these whiskies coming through and these ideas come into fruition, how close are they going to be to what they were actually intending to do and create? I think other issues are heritage grains. I mean, they tell a brilliant story, but they're not particularly good for things like disease resistance, which means you might need to use more inputs. You might actually end up, they can create an image of something that's, better for the environment, but actually it can be a bit of a paradox, and they can not be great for the environment because you can end up having a field, with a lot of disease in it. Now, if you have the opportunity in a tasting in the future to get David on here, whose background is very much in this area, and or indeed Tom, who spent his life growing barley, they can absolutely go into more detail on this. I'm interested to hear what David's thoughts on it are as well, as but for us, it's really about looking forward, not looking backwards. And you can make absolutely fantastic whiskey using laureate. We've got a really lovely new variety growing on the farm at the minute called Vessel, and no one's using that yet. We trialed it last year. It's right hot off the press. You'll probably see some distilleries using that in the future. It's a winter variety, first winter variety that's really been spec'd and approved for malting. for a number of years. And it's great for us because, you know, we can plant that earlier in the year. It's actually really helpful for kind of hedging your bets across the farm. A lot of people don't talk about weather when it comes to barley, and you know, a lot of it rides on the weather more so than other factors. You know, so actually having barley that can be more established and growing is going to stand up better to more extreme weather conditions, which is something we're all going to be dealing more with. You know, more heat waves and more extreme rain and these kinds of things. So you know, that's a variety that I think is going to break ground, I think, in the coming years.
Yeah, I met David last month when he was in the States. So as a background in farming as well in Israel, I drill him on all those questions. So
yeah, good. He's the man to drill on it. You know, yeah, I do obviously spend a lot of time on the farm. Our warehouse is on the farm. You know, I see drive through that barley all the time, not through it, but you know, I'm yeah, very, very close to it. But yeah, it's certainly in terms of my experience, you know, it's not quite 20 years in the whiskey industry, but it's going to be getting that way soon enough. Whereas yeah, Tom and David, it's decades in farming and crop science and that kind of thing. Yeah, so it's that kind of, I'm going to give that classic politician's answer where it's not quite my area of expertise, but hopefully that was
the
a reasonable answer.
It is patient.
But I think we can all agree, regardless of our position on barley, if someone can recreate 60s and 70s Islay whiskies, happy days. At a good price, we'll all be very happy.
We're ready for that. Amen for that.
Well, Joe, we put up a quick poll to see what everyone's favorite was. Do you have a guess which everyone liked the best so far?
I think Peter has got it this evening. But yeah, what came
It was very close.
Very close. Oh, look at
Flagship and Peter
Yeah.
tied, and STR just took it by 1 vote.
Okay. Excellent.
Tisk, tisk, tisk.
That's amazing sign that everybody like everything. Like
Yeah. And I'll say, I mean, it's funny because I think the STR is probably my least favorite of the three. I just while you were talking about the farming, I went ahead and ordered a bottle of the peated at from KNL. But neither Mission nor KNL have the flagship in stock, which is funny because that's the one you said you have all year round.
Yes, in the ideal world, that will never be off the shelf of any shop.
Right, but no, yeah, that's I'm a big fan of the peated. That's really nice, and it's, you know, it's, as you said, it's a good introduction to peat.
Yeah, great. And you know, you love peated whiskey, and you've got some friends around that you need those stepping stone whiskies to bring them to where you're at. Then yeah,
Right,
you've got one.
Come to the dark side. Come to the dark side.
That's right.
even Laurie is start to be convert. So
Excellent. Well, I'm glad I helped you guys out with the conversion rate to peated whiskey in this group.
My local Total Wine has the flagship in stock, and that's the only one they have.
Okay.
Grab it.
And that would be what, South Miami, Tony? South Florida?
No, up near Pensacola.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll be there Saturday.
Please clean those shelves. Take a few bottles there for us.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, any last questions for Joe before we go to the next stage of the evening?
I'm just trying to remember. Is Jim Swan was involved with the beginning or?
Yeah, so he was a big part of our distillery, and yeah, earliest conversations with Jim, I think, were back in 2012, all the way through to sadly when he died in February 2017. So yeah, he was with us for all the kind of really key early stages. Yeah, so he was a big part of it. Yeah, yeah, it was a real blow. Yeah, I mean, he was due to be with us that week when he passed away. But you know, we were, I think, in a place where, you know, we were coming up to a year's production, not quite. You know, we were kind of 10 months in at that stage. And I think for a lot of distilleries that were working with Jim that weren't quite as far down the track, you know, that were still in the build phase or whatever. Yeah, really difficult for a lot of people. Yeah, distilleries that were working with him. But yeah, we've, you know, there's a few clues to our setup. If you come to the distillery, some people can spot them in terms of how we do things and how we still do things. So yeah, he was a big part of it. Yeah, he was a great guy.
The fairy dust of Jim Swan.
Absolutely.
Is it easy to get to your distillery, say from Glasgow?
That's it's a bit of a drive, but yeah, it's definitely doable. Sam and the guys, when they were over with us, was that last summer or summer before? They tackled it in a day and back. So yeah, it's absolutely doable. But yeah, depends how you want to do it. We're 1 hour from York, be that really on the train or driving. So, you know, if you're in Edinburgh, and you can go Edinburgh to York within 2 hours, 2.5 hours on the train, and then another hour you can be at our distillery. Same really from London. York is like in the middle of the country, so you're between Edinburgh and London. So yeah, if you're in London or Edinburgh, you can be at the distillery really within 3.5 hours.
Okay.
If you're really kind of organised. From Glasgow, a bit longer. Don't know how long it took Sam and the guys, but it's probably in the region of a 4-hour drive, something like that.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
You can make it if you're driving the right side of the street or of the road, but otherwise you never know.
That's why I'll probably take the train.
Yeah. Well, the advantage to the train is, of course, when you visit a distillery that has a brewery involved, you know, train beers. You know, it's always a joy to drink a beer on a train if you're in nice countryside, and indeed a whiskey. Although I don't think you're allowed to drink whiskey and beer on the trains in Scotland. Although I've never had a ticket conductor that's been too heavy with those rules. I don't know if David's come across it. Yeah, but yeah, it's an easy way to get to us, and you come through some nice countryside. So yeah, definitely recommend the train, and it means that you can do more tasting as well while you're with us, which is always a good thing.
Thank you.
And if you're a beer lover, they have a wonderful beer there. Wold, WOLD, I believe. That's
Correct.
the beer that, yeah, excellent beers. They'll take you through beer making process as well.
Yeah, we're looking at going there in April, so.
Oh,
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, well, keep an eye out for what we've got on when you're coming over, because we do a joint brewery and distillery tour, which I think for yourself is perfect, because you can see, get right under the skin of the whole kind of brewing side of things and the farming side of things as well with that. But if you come in on a Friday afternoon, we do a deep dive tasting on a Friday afternoon, which goes more into the whiskey side of things. So less time on beer, more time on whiskey with that option. Just depends when you're with us. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, Joe, just let me know, you want to stick around for the rest, or are you gonna bounce?
You know what? I'm very happy to hang around for a bit. I've got a whiskey here to finish, so
We'd love to have you. We just always like to take a picture at the end, but if you're gonna leave, I was gonna do it in the middle, so we can have everybody. But if you're gonna stick around, we'd love to have you.
I think do a picture in the middle. I think that's sensible.
Let's do a picture in the middle, just in case Joe decides it's time for bed. Everybody grab your glass. You know the drill. Turn on your camera, big smile. Okay, thank you. Joe, thank you so much. Those were all fantastic options. I think everyone really enjoyed all three of them. The poll is an indicator that really it was a tight race between all of them. But now I'm going to turn everything over to David. You're up. The order we had, I think, was the barley, the fallow, and the plowing. But if you have any other changes, just let us know and we will drink in whatever order you recommend.
Perfect. Thank you. And Joe, thanks for that. I was just laughing there when you were talking about the rule against drinking on trains, but when the person that enforces the rules is also drinking, it really doesn't matter. That's Scotland for you. Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. So and this is the joy of being in a farm distillery in rural Scotland, but my internet cut off for 5 minutes there. So I missed a little bit of Joe. So if I freeze or the thing goes black, I'm going to run upstairs and reset, just keep drinking, and I'll be back in 2 minutes. Yeah, so we'll do it in that exact order. This is very cool. So what Joe has just taken you through in terms of the three whiskies, we have some similarities in the way that we do things. For example, growing all the barley on site. So it's a really nice tie-in, and yeah, hopefully you enjoy the Lochleas as much as you liked the Filey Bay ones. So yeah, my name's David. I very briefly about me, but I'm basically anything that's not production here is myself and my team. So I joined 4 years ago, when we just had 2 people in production and me doing all the other bits. Since then, we've grown quite quickly. So we're 15 people now in 26 countries, and just trying to keep up. So it's all going very well. We are quite unique in the Scotch world in the fact that we grow everything ourselves. We grow all the barley. So if you might like 2 Scotch distilleries that grow all the barley, us and Daftmill. I believe there's only 2 Scotch distilleries that malt everything, which would be Springbank, Kilchoman. So actually, no one does both. So we're in a very unique position here. So as we go through each whiskey, I'll just tell you guys about why we've created that particular dram, and then just ask away anything. The great thing for me makes my life very easy is that we don't have some big marketing story. We basically tell people exactly what we do, and that's it. If they like it, then amazing. If they don't, then there's plenty of whiskey out there. So let's crack on with the first whiskey. This one is called Our Barley, and is basically much like Joe mentioned with his flagship. We wanted one ongoing product, so we kind of needed something, for the on-trade world and for everything else, where we can have a consistent recipe that we stick to, and people can really get a hold of this, and that the flavor profile really sings Lochlea. So John Campbell, who's our master blender, he was at Lefroy for 27 years before he came here. He wanted to create something that showcased the flavors of Lochlea. So what are they? There's two things that you'll hopefully recognize as we go through each of the whiskies, and that is fruit and cereal. So there's, first of all, with every Lochlea, if you take our new make spirit, you get this lovely juicy fruit, lots of kind of orange zest, marmalade, really kind of juicy fruit. And then there's always this lovely cereal undertone, like biscuity, like freshly baked bread. If you go past a bakery in the morning and you get that lovely smell coming through, that's what our mash room smells like in the mornings, which is quite nice. So as we go through, hopefully there's some element of fruit and cereal in everything that we try. So have a little nose of our barley, see what you get. I personally pick up a lot of that orange, that kind of citrus up front. And then it's when you take that first sip on the palate, all that kind of bakery, freshly baked bread, that kind of oatiness, like a lovely porridge. and it's
I'm also getting like a really nice creamy note, like you said, like a really good like pastry, like a Danish that has some sort of like an orange cream in it or something.
Exactly. So that's exactly you're spot on. There's three different cask types in this whiskey. So we have first fill bourbon, first fill Oloroso sherry, and then some STR, like Joe mentioned, one of his. These three in that order are 60, 20, 20. So the majority of the product is made up from fresh bourbon casks. But the sherry cask element gives a bit more kind of a bit more of that fruit, makes it nice and bright. But the STR adds this kind of slight rye spice, a little bit of pepperiness in the finish, which is one of John's favorite things. He likes that kind of lingering, almost like tingling on your tongue. So if you can imagine having like orange marmalade on toast on kind of nice thick malted bread, yeah, it's a dangerously easy whiskey to drink. So with our barley, we thought, let's create something that we can always have available for people. And then aside from that, we have the ones behind me here. So 4 seasonal limited editions, and they come out spring, summer, autumn, fall, fall, winter, once a year. And this is us then transitioning in towards our core products, our kind of age statements and everything else. But yeah, the cask side of things is it's a big one for us because we source our casks directly. So I think it's one of the things in the industry. I don't know how you guys feel, but when you talk about sherry cask or wine cask or port, and everyone wants to know what altitude the grapes were grown at and what was the person's name that was picking them and did they have a pet. And then you say bourbon cask and people go, oh, okay, bourbon, as if like, like, hold on, every bourbon is not the same. Every bourbon has a different mash bill. How long was it in the cask for? How was it sitting outside in Kentucky for 6 weeks drying out? So we're very specific about where we get our casks from and what they've been used for before. So we don't buy from a big cooperage or a broker. We actually go to the producer. So in the case of bourbons, it's Maker's Mark. So all of our bourbon casks come from that one distillery. We trialed 9 different types of bourbon cask, and the higher wheat content in the mash bill and Makers and the thicker heads actually they have, just they work with Lochlea. That's not to say that any of the other casks are bad casks. They just are not what we were looking for. So yeah, having grown all the barley at the beginning of the process, to me, if we then go and source casks from a cooperage and say, oh yeah, we'll take random 200 bourbon casks, the whole story falls apart. So we need that traceability right the way through. A warm orange Danish with blackberry. You're making me hungry here, but that is spot on. Yeah. So this one is a great starting point. If you've never tried a Lochlea in your life, you're going to get a lot of the flavors that you would expect from this one. So it's the one we do the most of. It's the most popular in terms of volume. It certainly helps when you get a couple of these medals attached to it. So yeah, the biggest difference between us in terms of the other new distillers, I guess, is that whole single site thing. So we do everything here on the farm, right through, grow the barley right through to every cask maturing on site, and we try and do things the right way. And by that I mean we don't cut any corners. We try and we've got big Douglas fir washbacks in the still house behind me. We obviously there's cheaper ways you can do things in whiskey, but if you actually invest in the early setup, it'll pay off in the long run, especially on your cask. So we are happy to pay a little bit more and know where everything's coming from. So what do you guys think of the first whiskey?
This is lovely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is very nice.
So John's not here, so I'll take all the credit for that. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, we're lucky in the fact that we have a really experienced team making our spirit. So John himself his background was started in the warehouse at Lochlea 30 years ago, did every job in that distillery, and then was the longest serving distillery manager they ever had. So he, in terms of knowledge of production and spirit quality, he's kind of unrivaled in the Scotch world. So having a guy like that and his team in the setup really does help. And then on the other side of that, the fact that we're trying to do everything ourselves rather than outsourcing or buying in from third parties, it does give us control over quality at every stage. So even if you look at the setup in here, the stills, for example, were hand built by Forsyths to match our building. So we're in a 300-year-old farm building here, which has been repurposed. So we there's limitations on the space, the area, the height. So we had long discussions with Forsyths about, we wanted descending line arms. So if you actually see a picture of our stills, our wash still is slightly descending, our spirit still is like this. And that is to get more of those kind of heavier compounds coming over, because we're trying to create a spirit that is, we're not selling everything at 3 years old. Actually, we're selling nothing at 3 years old. We've got a 30-year inventory plan. So we know which casks are going into Lochlea 30 years old, 25, 21, and working backwards from there. So we can't make a spirit that's only good at 3.5 years. Otherwise, the wood takes over. So we're actually creating quite a robust new make that has lots of those oils in there, plenty of body and mouthfeel, and has those two elements of that kind of cereal, biscuity note, and the fruit. So if you're trying a Lochlea 30 years from now, it should still taste like a Lochlea, not like a whichever cask type had been in before. All right. If there's no other question on the first one, we'll move on to some sherry.
I guess I just wanted to mention Sam just dumped a link to a picture of the distillery in the chat.
Perfect, thank you, Sam. Yeah, I would literally walk around the distillery with the laptop here, but I fear the internet might die on me, and then we're struggling. Yeah, I'm sitting right here in our tasting room in Ayrshire in Scotland. The still house is behind this wall. The farm buildings are all this side, and then we're surrounded by fields of barley. It's 4:15 a.m. So there's no one else here, but yeah, I've got the whole place to myself. I'm just sitting in a big old distillery. It's funny. I've been in here late at nights working, but when it's 4 a.m. and it's dark and the stills are still slightly cooling down, making these noises, it's a little bit creepy, if I'm honest. Right, okay. So we'll crack on with this one. When I mentioned about the seasonal aspect, so you can see them behind me here. We have 4 seasonal whiskies. So sowing in spring, harvest in summer, fallow in fall, and then ploughing in winter. And the idea here is that until we do get to that core range and more age statements, we want to showcase the spirit in a few different ways. So different cask types and tying back to what's actually happening on the farm with each one. So with this one, we call it our fallow edition because in the fall is when we've done the harvest, the fields are left fallow to recover. And so we try and take care of the land, make sure that, we need this land to grow Lochlea barley for the next 200 years. So we need to make sure that there's plenty of nutrients in the soil. So what we do at this point is actually plant deep root vegetables like a cover crop. So beetroot, mustard seed, that type of thing. So the land all looks this lovely kind of purple hue throughout the soil. So that's where the name comes from. So dram for myself. And you'll see straight away by the colour on this one that we're going into heavier sherry territory. So if you sit it alongside our barley, you can see the difference there straight away. Much like Filey Bay, we don't add any colouring, we don't chill filter. Everything is just natural from the cask. And these are also bottled at 46%. I know that was a question earlier on. So yeah, 46. And with this one, we've got a combination of two different types of sherry cask. We've got first fill Pedro Jimenez, which is 55% of the cask makeup, and the other 45 is first fill Oloroso, both from one supplier in Jerez in southern Spain. So have a little nose, see what you get in this one. So for me, it's much darker. There's more richness. A little bit of I get. This could be because I've had about 4 coffees in the past few hours, but I get that kind of mocha stuff. So like coffee, chocolate, yeah, that kind of freshly ground coffee.
I definitely get like a little, like a mocha note, like little, that coffee chocolate, like chocolate covered espresso beans.
Yeah, I was
Exactly.
gonna say,
Yeah.
that's the first thing I got on the nose was like a creamy cappuccino, even, you know, but with a big fruit forward.
Oddly enough, I got more of an apple dumpling on the nose but when I took a sip of it, that completely went away and I got that peppery note, and the creamy part is still there, but I definitely got that sherry influence and that really rich chocolatey kind of note. It's really quite complex and surprising. It's quite good.
I got the dark chocolate, with that filling of a cherry kind of a thing.
I
Yeah,
love the
that-
spicy finish. It's got a nice spicy finish on it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So this we call them crops instead of batches because we're a farm. But this is the second crop, so it's essentially batch 2. The first batch we did last year was 100% Oloroso, so it was a bit like brighter red fruits, not as much spice. This one, because we've added in a big chunk of PX, first fill PX casks, there's definitely more of that coffee and the spices and everything coming through. So it's which with each batch, it gets a year older, but we also will play around with the cask types just to let people try something a bit different. So yeah, this one is. I'm sorry.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I really feel this one I added, I tried it neat and then I just added a drop of water and it just kind of it to me it made it much better with a drop of water. It was not bad first, but the drop of water to me just made it much better.
Okay, I mean, there's
very, very viscous as well.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we're trying to, and John has made a big point of trying to build into the spirit is that viscosity. So when we do floor malting traditionally here, you will get more of those natural oils in your barley, and then once it gets to the new make stage, you can see it in the glass. You can see the difference. So I'm glad that comes through. I think for me with this whiskey, you see the color and you might think, okay, this is going to be a big tannic, dry, for first fill sherry. Because I'm guessing everyone here's probably tried like a 15 or 18 or 20-year-old first fill sherry cask, and it can become quite kind of cloying and dry. To me, this has none of that. It's very fresh. It's 5.5 years old rather than 15 or 18, but I think it really gives you some of the lovely sherry notes that you want, but without the dryness and that kind of woody element that comes through when you've been in first fill sherry for a long time. So yeah, this is it's a popular one, I think, because of the color. A lot that we do events and people are drawn towards the dark liquid, which I get. You kind of taste with your eyes a lot of the time, but for us, the liquid color has no resemblance to flavor in our range. The one that we'll come on to soon is very light in color, but has a very, very different flavor profile. We also, even on our glass, try and link back to the farm. So you'll see the tire tracks, which are all around the farm here, actually embossed on the bottle. So we're always trying to make some subtle links back to the fact that we are a farm distillery. And yeah, that whole fallow period is interesting. It's like you could come to Lochlea at any stage in the year and the place will look completely different. So in summertime, the barley is up over your waist height and the grain shed looks quite empty. And then over the course of the year, the shed gets fuller and fuller, and the other one just grows. So it's like it's completely circular. It's actually it's a really great way if you've never. I know you guys will all have been to distilleries, but for someone if they've never seen anywhere, they can actually come here, and instead of the tour starting at the mill and then finishing when the spirit gets taken off in a big tanker, they can actually see the barley being grown, you can see malting, you can see every part of the process, and hand casks being hand filled on site. So I know Joe mentioned earlier, think about the kind of manual nature of Spirit Yorkshire Distillery. This, right here, the guys come in and turn over 40 valves by hand underneath where the stills and everything are sitting every morning before anything starts up. So it genuinely is a manual process. There's a lot of care and attention goes into every stage of that. So my friends down the road at Ailsa Bay in Girvan, it's owned by William Grants. They have 12 stills and they produce 50 million litres of alcohol a year, but it's one person standing at a big control board just pressing buttons. We're almost as far away from that as you could possibly be. So we have 4 people in production, but actually it's because every process is done by hand. So yeah, there's a lot of fear there. And it's also why it means so much to us when we do things like this and people like your good selves can actually try the liquid and hopefully enjoy it, because there's been a lot of time and effort going into making it. Any questions on the fallow?
I was just going to add, I actually have a first edition of the fallow, and it was interesting to hear that there was the difference in the formula between the first edition and the second edition, because I noticed how much spicier the second edition was over the first edition, and the addition of that, wow, that's a lot of additions, a lot of shuns in that. The addition of the PX really makes a difference between the first and the second, and that was. Yeah. It's hard to. I'm not going to pick between the two. I'm not going to tell you which one I like better. They were both.
I was just going to ask you.
Nope, not going to happen. Not happening. But it's just really interesting to see the evolution between the two of them, and it was really interesting to see what the difference was and figure out, okay, why is this one so much spicier than the previous, or where'd the pepper come from in this one, and hearing the difference in the formula really brought that to light.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and I think for me as a whiskey nerd, and proud of it, I'm actually keeping back a bottle of each crop, each batch, because I want to do exactly what you're talking about, where you can sit. So this year is when the third crop, the batch 3 of each one, comes out, and that's the final one. That's the trilogy complete. So I want to sit with my friends and have all 3 fallow editions and actually have that conversation, and do the same with the other ones, because it does. You're exactly right. It shows progression between 2018 spirit through to the year after to the and actually going back sometimes is John does this as well, but we'll actually go back and taste something that we released 3 years ago just to measure against where we are now. I mean, it's like none of us were here 200 years ago to try Springbank when they started, but we're here now. And a really exciting thing for me is we can sit here and try these 5-year-old, 6-year-old Lochlea whiskies, and hopefully we're having this exact same conversation in the same virtual room or even physical, even better, in 10 years' time, and we're trying some really high age statement Lochleas, but you will all know what this started as and how it's progressed. So yeah, it's exciting to be part of, and we have some close relationships in the in the industry with other distillers who I guess see synergies with what we're trying to do. So the owners from Springbank were here a few weeks ago. The guys over at Kilhoman, we've got good relationship with up in Ardnamurchan. These are other distillers where they're trying to do things in the right way, in my opinion. And I think it's, yeah, we phone them for advice and vice versa a lot of the time. So it's a nice part of the industry. All right.
David.
If there's no other, oh, yes, sorry, Sam.
Got a question here. To me, Lowland Whiskies and your Lowland Distillery, and we have at least one person that loves one of the Lowland distilleries. We're not going to say who it is because he's not going to tell us if he likes the first crop better than second one. But no, usually when you taste Lowland Whiskies, you know, because for some reasons, we're not going to disclose them, but you expect some softer, very light style. When I tasted Lochlea first, I was not sure if it's I knew it was a Lowland whiskey, but it doesn't taste like Lowland whiskey. Can you tell us what makes it different from others?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you're exactly right, Sam. So when we started, we did get a lot of questions around, are you trying to revive the Lowland region, or is Lochlea going to be a typical Lowland? I heard that one quite a lot, and the answer to both questions is no. We're doing our own thing. We're making Lochlea, and the fact that we're in the Lowlands is because the farm is here. We're not trying to. So please, guys, correct me if you have a different view of this. But to me, historically, if you think of Lowland single malts, like Sam says, it's something light, delicate, floral, maybe more like a Glenkinchie or Kintosh and these kind of styles. That's not Lochlea, and there's nothing wrong with any of that stuff, but we're trying to create our own completely unique style because of the provenance of what we're doing. So the barley and everything being grown here. So someone asked me a couple of weeks ago about new make style, and it was a great question, but they asked what if you were to compare your new make with another Scotch distillery, who would it be? And I was like, that's a great, really good question. And I'd never been asked it before, so it took me a while to think. But actually what I came up with is like a Glengarry. So if you take a kind of cereal-based, robust, slightly heavier Highland whiskey, like a Glengarry, that was the only one I think could come close to trying to tell people, this is the direction Lochlea is going in. So yeah, to your point, Sam, we are not a typical Lowland in any way. I think actually, if you look at the Lowland region now, there's some amazing different styles coming out of that area. The only reason that it's taken so long to get this way is because of, we can go through the history of why the Lowlands was associated with grain whiskey for blending, because the big blending houses were here. Anyone who wanted to avoid tax, you stay away from the Lowlands because that's where the guys are collecting money. So yeah, Speyside, this little corner on a map of Scotland, has a lot of distilleries because it took the taxman a long time to get up there. So yeah, we're now, I guess we're doing almost like we're going back in time with our production, but we're doing it in a kind of more modern way, the way I see it. All right, so we'll move on to our next dram then. So this one, this is actually really great timing. So you guys tried the Filey peated, and so we're actually moving on to something, a peated version of our own. So this is, we call it the ploughing edition. It's obviously been popular in this room because there's one dram left. So with this one, we bring it out in the winter time each year, and as with all of the seasonal releases, John and I decided, what kind of flavor do we want? In winter, you want something a bit more warming. So we thought, okay, let's get a little bit of smoke and peat involved. So with the ploughing edition, we've gone for first fill ex Laphroaig, ex Southern Isla Distillery casks. And these are 10-year-old barrels. So if you take something like the distillery that I mentioned, if you take that 10 years in that cask, that's a ton of infill in the wood. The other reason these casks are so fresh for us is that where they bottle Laphroaig is based is 30 minutes north of Lochlea. So when these casks are tipped, and it's for a company the size of Suntory, it's such an old school way of doing this. So they have a trough on the floor, so the cask gets rolled on, gets tipped, and then it gets pushed, and then they just keep rolling them on, and it's there's no automation there. It's not like it's not like a Jim Beam where there's a handle going in and a robot's doing it. This is guys physically rolling them along the line. Now, if it's a Friday afternoon and the guys want to get home and go and have a beer, they will roll these casks quicker. I've seen it myself when I used to work up there. So basically, we get casks that are so fresh that we've actually managed to get 3 full 700 ml bottles of Laphroaig out of one of the casks. And so that's how fresh these are. So when they come to us, they're good to go. We fill them immediately. So the difference again between first and second crop on ploughing is that the first one we had barrels, so 200-litre barrels, and quarter casks, both from Laphroaig. This one is 100% barrels. So this year we've amped up the peat level a little bit. John wanted to just get dial that up slightly for the second batch. So in terms of colour, I mean, you'll see how light this is in comparison. It's there's very little colour coming off of those casks, but the flavour is entirely different. So yeah, on the nose for this one, I think, and again, everyone's different. Depends what you've had for your dinner or during the day. But this is, I don't get a lot of peat on the nose of this one. I think it's more tropical fruit. It's your kind of pineapple, mangoes. But then as soon as you take that sip, it all starts to come through on the palate.
I have to say, I'm also one of the people who's just not a fan of peat in general, but I've actually enjoyed both of these peat expressions tonight because they're soft, they're subtle, it doesn't overwhelm you, and it's a really, really nice balance. Like this, like you said, this has just that little wisp of smoke, but it's got very fruit forward. It's kind of like when you char the fruit on the barbecue at the end of your barbecue. You get that sweetness from the fruit, those fresh notes, but that little bit of smoky char that's just on the end.
Yeah, absolutely. That I mean, what you've just described, I'm probably going to steal that if I'm honest, because that's a perfect line. But yeah, that kind of grilled fruit on the barb. I mean, it's funny because the casks obviously come from Laphroaig, which is if you try Laphroaig 10, you're going to get full-on iodine, TCP, really medicinal, which I also love. That's great whiskey, but when you use the cask and you fill it with something that's more fruit forward and has a kind of cereal base to it, you end up with this kind of lovely balance of charred tropical fruit in the front, and then the more that you take sips, you just get this lovely kind of ashy smoke. Is that a little bit more like an old school Bowmore in some ways, because it's this kind of tropical fruit ashiness, and it's not. I think Joe mentioned earlier about not trying to recreate an Islay whiskey. That's certainly not what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to show what the Lochlea spirit is like in this type of cask. So it's
I'm
more.
just impressed with kind of like what Jane was saying, right? I mean, how much of that smoke peat flavor you can get in it just by by aging it in a Islay cask. That to me is, I mean, is mind blowing. Truth be told, and then I mean the whiskey that got me into to peated was a whiskey that was finished in Sauternes cask. So again, that little sweetness to it. So yeah, I'm a fan of this one, and Sam, I can't find it. Neither KNL or Mission has it. I'm just saying.
I will send you a link to one of the shops in California that ship as well.
Yeah, these ones are, so with the small batch bottlings, these are they're spread across 26 different countries. So we try and get them out to our key partners like Sam at Impact. So we make sure that they have a good allocation. But it can be difficult to try and get every person stocking, because they are fairly limited. I mean, this one, to give you an example, so this is, we did I think 9,500 bottles of this one, and Germany asked if they could take all 9,500 bottles. So we had to say, we have a lot of customers out there, so we need to. We're trying to think very long term about this and say, well, actually, there are markets where we see the future of Lochlea, and US clearly being one of those. So we're trying to be smart about, we want people like yourselves to be able to try these whiskies and to be able to join us in that journey.
So on this plowing, so we are tasting the second edition, and the link Sam sent me here in the chat. They have the plowing edition first crop. So what is the difference between the first and I guess second edition on crop on the plowing? I know you told us about the fallow.
Yeah, so a good question. So I'm actually I wish I could get a hold of more first crop, because it's sold out over here a long time ago. But no, that's very cool. So the first crop was two different types of peated casks. So it was ex-Laphroaig 10-year-old barrels, but it was also ex-Laphroaig quarter casks. So they are only used for a finish with Laphroaig, so 18 months. So they still retain more of the first fill bourbon element. So actually, in terms of differences in flavor between what you've just tried and the first one, I would say the first one has more, it's a bit more spirit forward, has more Lochlea, slightly less peat, and I think the second one edges more towards the barrel. So those 10-year-old barrels just have a lot of power to them. The quarters are a bit more gentle. I know that sounds strange because they are smaller casks and you would assume more wood contact, but because they haven't had the same length of time, there's not as much infill in the wood. But it's a great way of seeing the difference. So I personally love the first one. I couldn't get enough of that one. And I thought I was a bit worried about the second, because I thought how's John gonna kind of top that? But he taught me again to just leave the experienced hands to it. So it's been very, very popular. And then coming to the end, so the final one of the playing will be the beginning of 2025, and that will kind of finish the seasonal range. So keep an eye out for that one, probably in sort of springtime of next year. Any questions on the ploughing edition or any of the drams that we've tried so far?
Are you guys experiment with any type of of barley that you're growing?
So yeah, on the barley side, we grow everything on the farm, and right now it's all laureate. That's the strain that we're using. Neil, who's the owner and who runs the farm, he's constantly looking at different varieties. So I think Joe mentioned a couple earlier that they have to go through the approval process with the maltsters, so you need to. There's only certain ones that you can actually use, but yeah, our challenge, if we were to go and use some heritage varieties, for example, our challenge would actually be how do you keep them separate going through the process? So kind of like like Waterford in Ireland, where they try and split it by farm, and they obviously waste a lot on either side because you can't reuse your third water and everything. So we try and stick to one variety that works for us. We're also we're on the west coast of Scotland, which is a little bit wetter and windier than the east. So laureate is a little bit short, doesn't grow quite as high, so it's a bit more hardy. So it works really well for us. But it's a really interesting one. I'm always interested to see new varieties coming through. I think for the biggest thing for us right now is we're in the process of building a full malt floor, so that's taking up a lot of our resource just now, because we do everything by hand. So when we malt, we literally steep in tractor trailers, and we it's old school, which is good fun, but not always the most efficient way of doing things. But yeah, that for me, that's it's a great segue from Filey into Lochlea, because there are similarities there in terms of concept. I guess the main difference being the actual flavor profile, the style of whiskey is different, but having growing everything in one place is fairly unique. So it's great to see that's happening. And even with the herb barley, when we were trying to come up with the name for this product, and local barley has already been taken. Kilhoman obviously has the Ryla barley, so it's kind of like that. What they do for those products is what we do all year round. So we're trying to kind of explain that to people. So yeah, we just, our barley was the only thing we could think of that would tell people that it's all physically here. And it's funny, we do tastings events, and quite often people seem to. So I'll say that we grow all the barley, and they actually assume that everyone does that. If it's not, I mean, maybe not in this forum, but if you do the Macallan tour, they say, "Oh, we grow some barley," and yes, they grow one field of barley, and it does 15 minutes production, but we, grow to last the whole year. So I think I can understand if you're new to the category, or you've not been to distillery before, and you hear that, you might assume, okay, everyone must, kind of grow their own barley. That's part of the deal. It's just, it's almost trying to get through to people that what we do here is not normal. It's kind of, fairly old school in the way that we're producing.
I can say from my personally, there's so many distillery coming out in the same time, and kudos to Sam that know how to pick the right ones, and for both of you, for you and Joe. And same event that I met David, I met the two ladies from your distilleries. I don't remember what's her name.
Yeah.
Emma. So you guys definitely one of the ones I'm looking forward to see the development. It's such a great, from young stage, you already stand out among those 30, 40 that just came out, not even counting the Irish and the rest of the world, and that give a compete for the Scottish and the British Island right now. They're great whiskey all over the world right now, and this group we try to taste all of them, not just the traditional one. And you guys definitely doing and going in the right direction, and I definitely wanted to see the development. And again, I hope you guys can bring some of the old style back to the bottles, you know.
Yeah,
Because
thank you.
it's looked like that's kind of the focus and focus about the richness and not just about the production that the entire Western world go to. So cheers for that.
Yeah, cheers. No, thank
Thank
you
you, Gordon, for
saying
warm
that.
words. We appreciate that. If any
Yeah.
of you is a fan of single cask, we have we brought this single cask of Lochlea, which is kind of similar to Plowing Edition. David, you might correct me if I'm wrong. While you were working on the batch with John, and you and John set this cask aside, offered it for us, and we brought it here. It's matured in a Lafroy cask. Can I say that? Lafroy?
Yeah, we're all friends.
Yeah.
Stop the recording.
Yeah. And
Mute
it's
the recording.
yeah,
Too
really
late.
nice. There you go.
Hey.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Come on.
David, same question. We've done a poll. Would you like to wager a guess which everyone's favorite Lochlea was for tonight?
Yeah. So I'm going to go with our barley. That's my favorite.
Again, this one was really, really close. Wow. The barley and Fallow tied, but the Plowing was just one vote behind.
Okay. No, I mean, it's great that there's such a split.
See, it's interesting because I'll be honest, our barley did not hit me right at all. But I was very torn between the Plowing and the Fallow, which are two completely different whiskeys. Like, but I really, I'm a big fan of when you have that heavy sherry cask edition influence as well, right? I mean, I have some Redbreast. I have the PX and I have the Oloroso, and I love them. But I love the peat, and as I said, kudos for some really nice whiskeys here, and very different at the same time, right? It's not you can take these two and you could easily have told somebody, yeah, these are two very different distilleries, right? You wouldn't really know. So
Yeah,
good job.
I appreciate the feedback, and going back to what Golan said just a moment ago there about the spirit. This is so important for me. So when I first came here 4 years ago, and you're absolutely right, there are new distilleries all the time right now, not just here but all over, and some of the whiskies coming out of different parts of Europe are fantastic, really good spirits. So I was waking up in the middle of the night with, sweating, thinking about how is our spirit going to be different? Because my biggest fear was someone tries Lochlea new make versus I won't name names, but 2 or 3 other new distilleries and can't tell the difference. And I thought that if we were ever at that stage, we're done, because there's no point of difference. We don't have our own deal. So John and I have spent a lot of time honing what we do here so that people will know what Lochlea is, what that DNA is. So that big juicy fruit and that cereal biscuity character should come through in everything we do. And aside from flavor, so having a unique flavor is one thing, but actually the barriers to entry of what we do, first of all, you have to own a farm, which not everyone can. And then you have to be doing everything else on one side, which is a very manual and physical and resource heavy thing. So I'm hopeful that because of how we're doing things, we will be okay, and we're growing very, very quickly. So hopefully there's enough that's different about Lochlea among the new distillers for us to have a long future. Because even this site, the site has been here for 600 years, just over 600 years. So if you look back at maps from that time of the area, it's Lochlea, it's right here. Loch being the water that's the bottom of the hill, and the Lee being the grassland. That's Scots for grassland. So this area has a really rich history, and I'm hopeful that if someone's looking back 200 years from now, actually the history they're talking about is the whiskey rather than just the land.
I kept trying to ask this, but everybody kept coming up with other questions. It's something you said about the batches, that there was a trilogy. So you're only going to do 3 crops of each of your seasons. What are you going to do after that?
Yes, great question. So we decided, the biggest challenge, if I can rewind for a second, with these ones, so with the 4 different seasonals, is we do a batch, and then we try and as fairly as possible spread that around everyone. But there's always, we can never make enough, or we can never get people exactly what they want. So you end up with certain markets saying, "Oh, we wanted more of the fallow, or the harvest, or we've got customers that missed out on the port cask one, or whatever it is." Which is frustrating because we want as many people to be able to open bottles of Lochlea as possible. So what we're doing is finishing the seasonal trilogies, and then we're moving into more core ongoing products. So our barley will still be here. That is a permanent product, and then we'll come up with 3 or 4 whiskies, and we're already started that process, so that people have a range of Lochleas that they can buy, and then we can actually do slightly bigger volumes of each one. Because that's, I think, until we get to, I mentioned earlier, the age statement plan, that's what we have. But even Lochlea 10 years old is still 4 years away. So we're trying to kind of bridge that gap by having more ongoing product. Because I feel like, and the feedback certainly that we have from our customers is that, it's great doing limited editions and small batches, but actually having something that we can, get out to people and they know, okay, I can go and buy that again if I really liked it, is helpful. So yeah, we're trying to be flexible. So there'll be some new things coming over the next 18 months from Lochlea.
Thank you. That's really cool. I mean, it's kind of nice that you've got something that you could start with, but then you could totally pivot to something that's a little bit more sustainable and available to more people. So that's pretty cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and do you know, it's a great question, because another part of one of the biggest benefits of doing the seasonal releases has been to get feedback from people like yourself. So we do tastings, and if people love the fallow or they just go crazy for the ploughing, then it probably makes sense for one of our core products to be in along those lines. So we've been gathering this feedback over the past 3 years, and we'll keep doing that for the last editions.
And now I'm kind of sad that I have never tried any of the others, and I'm like wondering if I'm going to have to turn into one of the searchers like half the group is and go looking for them. No, not more challenges.
I've got the same problem, but that's because I drank the ones that I bought.
I gotta say, that's one of the nice things about our group is when we do these and people are looking for them, somebody finds them, they let everybody else know, like, hey, I found it, it's here, here's the link. So we're a whiskey hunting team.
I know it's kind of annoying when Golan sends out, "Oh, I know I know a store that have 3 of them. Should I buy one for you?" Fine. But
I'm not gonna twist your hand anymore. So, but
virtual
I do know
enabler
where
society.
the store by me that have it.
I know.
We need to rename ourselves to the Virtual Enabler Society.
Yeah, we really are bad influence on each other. Oh well, we have a good time while doing it, so it's all good.
Sam, where is the Impex available? It's still available or it's gone?
Yes, it's at the whiskeyshopusa.com. Have it. Shipping is a little expensive from San Francisco, but you know, maybe if we get multiple bottles, you know,
The shipping cost goes dramatically down if you go with 2+ bottles there. So you might want to consider that. And the
Yeah.
price actually for this single cask, it's pretty good. It's under $100, which is no complaints on this one. David, you didn't hear that because you're gonna start jumping the price on me. So
Okay, well, and we've done one last poll just for the fun of it. Favorite overall for the evening. I'm going to say right now we've done a lot of these tastings, and it's not very often that all these polls have been this close. They've all been really tight.
Yeah.
So I think the general consensus is everyone liked all of our samples tonight.
That's great. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting us. Really appreciate it.
I think for two young distilleries and again, usually when we do the tastings, there is distinct things. Without the fact that some people don't like peat, some people like peat. Usually we have a favorite among the group, and the fact that between the 6 tasting, they all had followers to say that's a favorite. I think it said something for two new distilleries. It's amazing. It's mean you guys doing something right.
I mean, to me, it was really hard to pick. I mean, I don't think I voted on the last one, but because I was scouring some other things. But I mean, on both of them, I had a hard time picking. And yeah, among all six of them, yeah, that would be really hard. They're all really good. It's not like none of them were, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. No, they were actually good. So you know that makes it harder to have to pick which one you like the best.
That's what makes being a co-host hard, is I didn't get to vote either. I sat there both times going, I can't vote for this one. I can't vote for that one. No. But it did mean
sadly,
I didn't have to pick a favorite, so.
Yeah. But they were all, yeah, it was neck and neck on most of them. Yeah, Jane and I couldn't vote because in case my internet went kablooey, I wanted, because it happens occasionally.
So can I ask, David, have you tried any of Joe's whiskey, and vice versa? Joe, have you tried any of David's whiskey?
So
start with that, David.
Sorry.
It's the Pepsi Coca-Cola commercial from the.
Right. I mean, I'm curious, right? And I don't know if the recording should be off for the answer of this, but
I mean, yeah.
Let me know. I can pause it.
No, I've tried a couple of Filey bees. I think they're because the brands have some synergies there. We sometimes like is the case with Impex, the guys, Sam and his team, we end up with the same import partner. So you'll be doing an event or a show, and these guys are pouring theirs alongside. So yeah, I've tried a couple and really enjoyed them. Really, really good quality spirit. I like the way they're doing things, so I'm maybe biased as well.
Yeah, Lochlea make great whiskey. Pretty frequently taste it, as David says, at different shows when, we're crossing paths in different markets and that kind of thing. So, they're certainly of distilleries that, we, absolutely know and, love what they're doing, and, a lot of respect for how these guys are making whiskey. There's a lot of synergy in both production principles. So we do try. There's a couple of bottles of Lochlea kicking around in the office. I did actually mean to bring one along to try this evening, but it'll remain there for now. Yeah, but yeah, lot of time for what Lochlea are doing. Absolutely.
I'm also a bit scared of David, so I just try whatever he puts in my glass. He's a big guy, so yeah.
No, I mean, I think it's very commendable that both of you, use local products, right, to produce a very quality whiskey. So I think that's really cool.
I'm still gobsmacked that you two have gotten up at 3 o'clock to join us. I appreciate you to pieces for getting up and drinking with us in the middle of the night.
Well, the birds are
The
singing
sun,
now.
Jane, the sun is actually coming up now, so it's
Time for a
I'm
bacon
looking out the
buddy
window.
Time to start making some more whiskey.
and more coffee.
No, it's been my absolute pleasure.
And likewise, it's been absolutely brilliant. And yeah, obviously not typically running or talking about whiskey at 3 a.m., but upshot of this is that I will definitely be early for work.
There's not a lot of things that you want to talk about at 3 a.m., but I think whiskey's probably one of them.
Absolutely agree with that.
Agreed.
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Right.
much, Joe, David. Thank you both
Well,
so much for either being up really early or being up really late to be with us. Sam, we always love having you on our chats and our tastings.
I want to thank you all.
Uh,
I told you before you're my favorite group. So
see, that's on the recording.
yeah.
And any last
that's right.
questions that we would like on the recording? Because otherwise I'm going to shut the recording down and then we can really talk about stuff.
I just wanted to thank you also for all the comments and compliments, because I know both teams work so hard to make sure they produce best of the best, and it means the world to them. I've been to both distilleries. I witnessed the creativity, the passion, the talent, the sleepless nights like this one they put into their whiskey. So thank you so much on behalf of both teams.
Thanks, guys.
Great. Thanks again. And yeah, hopefully see you guys somewhere soon. David, I'll see you at a show somewhere, I'm sure.
Cheers. Thank you.
Yeah, either good night or good morning, whichever you like.
Cheers.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.